And very often you notice preachers call this the book of the Revelation of St. John. That is not the title. It's the book of the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's called, to the scholars, the Apocalypse, or again, the revelation means the unfolding, the taking away of the veil, as it were. I find the book of the Revelation a book of mystery, a book of majesty, and a book of misery. Because it shows me the final stage of lost men, that forever and ever they're going to be cut off from God. That if there are 1,000,000 roads into hell, there's not one road out. That if they continually sing in heaven, worthy is the Lamb, in hell, the only thing they sing is the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we're not saved. And I suggest to you in these awesome days of such universal chaos in morals, in politics, in economics, that maybe every day this coming week you should read the 17th and 18th and 19th chapters of the book of the Revelation. You know, this book has an imprint on it that no other book has in the whole of the Word of God. Because in chapter 1 verse 3 it says, "Blessed is he that readeth and they that hear." There's a lot of people that read, but they don't hear. Blessed is he that readeth and heareth the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Let's go to the 20th chapter in this book, Revelation 20, and read from verse 11. "And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat upon it, from whose face the heavens and the earth fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell were delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged, every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire." This is the second death. "And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." Step over a minute into the 3rd chapter of Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, chapter 3, and we read there from verse 9. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 9. "For we are labourers together with God, ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. According to the grace of God which is given unto me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. For other foundation can no man lay than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he buildeth thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire." Now, back to Revelation chapter 20 again. The judgment of the sinners. "I saw a great white throne," typical obviously of purity, "and him that sat upon it." Now we read these things and they kind of slide over our minds, but listen to the awesomeness of this. "From whose face the heavens and the earth fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. Various titles have been given to this awesome event. John Wesley called it the Greatest Eyes. Billy Sunday, in his wonderful way, called it Payday Sunday. A cowboy preacher preaching on it called it the Last Roundup. You could call it, if you like, a date with destiny. Or better still, or more awesome still, you could call it a day with destiny. Or if you like, you could call it your day in court. Now this book begins, the book of the Revelation, by telling us these things will shortly come to pass, and that was 2,000 years ago. In a very brief but very brilliant biography of one of the greatest preachers that ever preached in America or England, the biographer says that this man, well, he had strange habits, and one of them was to carry in the right-hand pocket of his coat a handful of precious stones, a diamond, an amethyst, a sapphire, a ruby, an emerald, and so forth. To add to his strange ways, he would walk into a park where people were going up and down, and he would put his hand in his pocket and take one of those precious stones, and then he would hold it up to the light of the sun, and he would lower it and higher it and seek this different shades from it or different illuminations from it. And people would go past, particularly children, and, you know, they do this. You know how they do that, you know. I don't mind people doing that. If they want to point to their own heads, that's okay. If they point to mine, it's something else. But the children were doing this, you know. There's something strange about that man. And there's an old saying that potter envies potter. Preachers don't usually criticize singers, they criticize preachers. Singers criticize singers. Potter envies potter. And these preachers were sitting round a table one day eating in England, and they began to discuss this famous preacher. And one of them said, I heard him the other night, he was awesome, he lifted us into eternity, he has a vast vocabulary. I hardly knew whether I was in the body or out of the body. And then my little boy said he'd seen him in the park, playing a game like a child plays with marbles, playing with precious stones. The hymn writer wrote about the Bible, and he called it a golden casket where gems of truth are stored. It is the heaven-drawn picture of Christ, the living Word. There are roughly 750,000 words in the Bible. I suggest that, like that man selected his stone and lifted it up to the light of the sun, that we select one word out of this golden casket, and that word is judgment. And we hold it up to the light of eternity. And you can tell God you're not concerned about what this preacher says, but say, Lord, give me some new illumination on this awesome fact of judgment. I thought repeatedly this week of that awesome sermon, one of the greatest ever preached in America. Back in the 1700s, it was preached by Jonathan Edwards. We're told he brought his manuscript, and he had a candle there, and he wasn't very good looking, and he had a big nose, and he thumbed and he read with monotonous routine. He read that sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And people fell off their seats and they clung to the pillars that were holding the gallery up. And he didn't say, oh friends, please excuse me, I never meant to embarrass you like that. There's some psychological phenomena going on here. But while they were laid out, he just lashed them with the Word of God. And people cried out in their despair. There was a reason for it, because before he had prayed over and over and over again, oh God, stamp eternity on my eyeballs. I don't know anybody else that ever prayed it, maybe we said it. But you know, if God should stamp eternity or even judgment on our eyeballs, or if you like, on the fleshy table of our hearts, I'm quite convinced we'd be a very, very different tribe of people, God's people in the world today. We live too much in time, we're too earthbound. We see as other men see, we think as other men think. We invest our time as the world invests it, we invest our money. We're supposed to be a different breed of people. It must have been very awesome in the days of his flesh to get up one morning and say, well, I'm not going to work. I don't know who this man is, but I'll tell you what. I'm so stale and dried up, and I've been to the synagogue and the temple, and those old boys mutter, and they quote about somebody coming, and they don't believe he's coming. You know, Enoch says that, Jude records, that Jesus will come with 10,000 of his saints. Why did he come that way the first time? Why didn't he come sweeping through the sky when it was as black as night over Jerusalem? Why didn't he come with 10,000 saints? Why didn't he come with the sound of trumpets? Why didn't he capture the world like that? He didn't come that way. And when he did come, they couldn't believe that somebody clothed in flesh and blood, walking around, that had to eat and sleep and do everything else like we do, was the Son of God. But he began to stir Jerusalem. And you might have gone into town and say, well, I've been on business in Jericho, you know, I've got to look after affairs. What are you excited about? Oh, we went to see this man Jesus, this fellow that the synagogues are disturbed about and the priests are criticizing. And you know, he does amazing miracles. Why? He unplugs deaf ears and he casts the demons out of people and he cures leprosy. And you know what he did yesterday? He actually raised a man from the dead. My, that must have excited them. Jesus going to the tomb and saying, roll away the stone. He didn't roll it away. He gave wine at the feast, but he said, you fill the water pots. There's some labor we have to do. You put the water in the water pot, I'll turn it into wine. You roll the stone away. And then he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus! My, that would have excited me. I don't know about you. I'd have hit the ceiling, I think. He cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, as Campbell Morgan says. He said, Lazarus, come forth. If he'd just said, come forth, all the cemetery would have come, and it wasn't time for them to come yet. So he just said, Lazarus, come forth. And he came forth. He was alive. But boy, he was bound with, gagged with, on his face. He had grave clothes. He could only shuffle. His hands were tied. And that's true about 95% of believers today. They're alive, but they're gagged. They're bound. They've still got grave clothes. And Jesus says, loose him and let him go. We're bound by superstition. We're bound by the theology of our grandfathers or something. But the church is gagged and bound. She needs release in this awful hour in which we're living. And the only one that can bring that release is Jesus Christ himself. Why, even the disciples, well, what do you think about Master now? He's even raising the dead. And Jesus says in John 5:28, listen, don't marvel at this. Oh, if this stirs you, wait, I've got a word for you. He says, the day is coming in the which all who are in the grave shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they shall rise. Did you get that? From Adam, wherever he is right now, in the sands, in the dust, all who are in the grave shall hear the voice of the Son of God. You see, Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life, and I believe he did rise from the dead. Not because of that long list in 1 Corinthians 15, but away at the end of the book of Revelation, he says, I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I have the keys of death and hell. Don't you believe that old bachelor in Rome? You don't know who he is? Well, it's the Pope. He says he has the keys, not on your life. Jesus has the keys of death and of hell. And at the voice of the Son of God, won't that be amazing when he says, rise? All that are in the sea and all that are in the grave. I crossed the Atlantic, I guess, about 18 times on the Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, United States, and after dinner at night, when people went to smoke and drink and dance and everything else, I walked up and down the deck, and almost every time I crossed it, I looked overboard and I said, hey, you down there, you're going to get up one day. You buccaneers who died in the Spanish Main, stealing treasures, and the folk that sank in the Lusitania, and the people that sank in the Titanic, and the people that sank in all the great ships during the war, at the voice of the Son of God, they're going to rise. Millions of them, billions of them, trillions of them. And they're all going to stand at the judgment seat of Christ. That's going to be a spectacle. Oh, where is it going to take place? I don't know. You see, this book of the Revelation is not only at the end of the Bible, but it deals with the end of time, and then it deals with things that happen at the end of the time. And it's the only book in the world which is authentic. And everyone that is dead is going to hear the voice of the Son of God. Look for a minute at that 6th chapter in the Revelation. Look at verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, even as a tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed, and as a scroll when it is rolled together. And every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every freeman, they hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day is come. In the end of the book of the Revelation, it says of the redeemed, which is in the other judgment, that they're going to come and they long to see his face. Again, Fanny Crosby, blind for 84 years, and when somebody said to her, it's a shame a great Christian like you is blind. You can't see the sunset, you can't see the lovely flowers, you're at such a disadvantage. Oh, no, she said, I'm at a great advantage. You know, she was the first woman in history, in American history, blind though she was, to address the joint, what do you call them, different sections of Congress. She addressed the senators, and she addressed the congressmen, and she addressed the whole government, the first woman in history, a little blind woman. And they said, and you never see the sunset. God has denied you so much. She said, my dear, I have a great advantage over you. What's your advantage? She said, don't you realize the first face I ever see will be his face? Do you wonder she wrote so many hymns about his face, seeing his face? That will leave us spellbound when we see his face. But here the great men, the rich men, the mighty men, the rulers. I saw the dead, small and great, every king that's ruled over England, the caliphs of Baghdad, the Maharajas of India, the multimillionaires, the billionaires. They're all going to stand one day. Can you imagine it? At the judgment seat of Christ, to give an account for the deeds done in the body. Well, of course, if you have a judgment, you must have a judge. I do not have any pictures of Christ in my home, because I don't think you should make any likeness of any graven image, and nobody knows what Christ was like. You see pictures of Jesus as a baby, you see him as a young man, you see him sometimes on the back of an animal riding into Jerusalem. But there's a picture I've only ever seen once, and it was so grotesque I didn't look a second time. At the voice of the Son of God, they're all going to rise and face the eternal judge. What will he be like? In Australia, they showed me the picture that they had. Beechcroft or somebody, Beecher, painted the picture of Christ in Australia. He's got lovely blonde hair and bright blue eyes and a lovely flaxen beard. Well, I don't think that was a picture of Jesus. And the Chinese have an interpretation of Christ through their artists. And there are some dreadful pictures, I think, that are being given by the great masters, so-called. And they've given us pictures of Jesus, but I'll tell you what, it's a very different picture in the Word of God. I believe that the Church of Jesus Christ needs a new revelation of the majesty of God. This is what? This is the King of Kings, and he's the Judge of Judges, and it's the Tribunal of Tribunals, and there's no court of appeal after it. The verdict is final. There'll be no dice judgment. Two people at least have said to me this week, there is no justice in the earth today. Maybe there isn't. But I hang on to a word that says, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? The Apostle Paul got a picture of Jesus, not with a lamb in his arms, not like the stained glass windows in our so-called cathedrals,